Hello, and welcome to the Paradox Podcast, the podcast about the business of the video games industry, where we try to shed a little bit more light on the inner workings of our industry and demystify the whole process. I'm your host, Shams Trajani. I'm the Chief Business Development Officer at Paradox. My partner in crime, the Chief Marketing Officer at Paradox, Daniel Goldberg, is currently on paternity leave for the rest of the year, so I'll be running the podcast solo for a while. Today's guest is none other than PDX Chief Technology Officer, Mina Boström. High time that we had you on the show. Welcome, Mina.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I must say I am such a big fan of your podcast. At least it's written here in the script. So, thank you. Thank you.
Before we get going, as always, what have you been playing? Have you been playing anything?
Yes, of course, CK3. And I must say, it's not only because it got recently published.
And you have to play it, yeah.
Yes, it's my game.
Okay.
Medieval time, it's my game.
Okay, have you ever played any of the other grand strategy games, managed to get into them? Or was this, what are you experiencing the same thing a lot of people are saying, is that this is the first time you can really get into one of the weird...
It's the first time that I really can play. I was observing my kids playing Stellaris and Cities before.
Oh, they play?
Yes.
Okay,
yes,
wow.
Yes.
How old are they? They're not that old.
They're 10, 13, and 15.
This is the misconception that I keep having about our audience, that they're generally, bearded old men, and that's being proven so wrong over and over. On my end, I've been playing a lot of classics with my kid, as always: World of Goo, Stardew Valley, Audio Surf 2, and the horse game, which is Assassin's Creed Odyssey, or the other horse game, which is Red Dead Redemption 2. So there's always a theme here. So they played Stellaris, and we're playing games with our kids. That's good. Okay, so with that, let's get today's show on the road. Okay, Mina, first off, who the hell are you, and what are you doing here?
Yes, I am a Serbian tech girl, very passionate about technology. So my background, I have been working with the software development for more than 20 years. Biggest part of my career, I worked as a developer and an architect coding, but 5 years ago, I switched to managerial path. I worked within different industries, mainly in financial industry.
Oh, wow.
That is a little bit opposite of video games.
You still have your soul. It's impressive.
Yes, but I think it's like boring part of my career. Maybe I should live some things that are not very usual, that is not typical for other people, like how they build their career. First, I have to start with my childhood, but it won't be very long.
Here we go. I talked to Mina about she was like, how long is the podcast? I was like, well, it's usually like 30 to 40 minutes. He's like, oh, that's not going to be enough. So let's see how we do this. Yeah, take it away, Mina.
Yes, I will summarize that very shortly. So, very happy childhood, raised in a family with a mother engineer and father mathematician. And why is it important? Because I got both approaches, theoretical and pragmatic and practical. So I think the way how I think, it's really a mixture of those two approaches that helped me to develop in my professional career, because I really like to think, to find those concept methodologies, abstract thinking, how things are related to each other and how they fit together. One example is how I combine my swimming competitions with the business strategies.
Mm-hmm.
As a child, I was a competitive swimmer. I stopped swimming, and now in my mature age, I decided to swim and compete again. And it's so difficult to find the time to train when you have a full-time job, 3 kids, 1 husband. I mean, so many things to think about.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, because I think it's so important to find a good strategy how you achieve your goal. And I've applied the blue ocean strategy on my swimming competitions.
Okay.
And although I wasn't the fastest one or the best one, I managed to get a gold medal on the Swedish National Championship in master swimming.
Okay, so you, to apply the blue ocean thinking, you chose a category where everyone else was bad. And you dominated that.
Exactly, where people didn't invest in that.
Exactly.
So I found my market niche there.
Okay, that's actually pretty good. As somebody said, I was having a business meeting the other way. The way you become a record-breaking athlete is not to just have the best effort once is just like push your best incrementally 1,000 times over, and you break the most amount of records. So it's applying business strategy to sports. Okay, so more about yourself. Anything we need to know?
Yes, for me it's very important that work-life balance, or I would put it as a work-life fusion.
Okay.
I really apply that inclusive partnership. So I like to combine my professional career with my family. So usually my husband and myself, we are bringing our children to different conferences because we think that really gain the best of that combination. So if you meet me at the conferences when children were small, you never knew if we were hiding children under the stage, behind the stage, so you never knew if some child will pop up. Now children are bigger, so they're with me at the stage presenting together.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yes, and I think it's really very important because I'm not bringing at home problems, I'm bringing nice solutions. So we can teach our children some conceptual thinking, some nice methodologies which can be useful in their lives.
I think that most listeners can already, at this point in the podcast, tell that we're not going to be talking a lot about technology over this course of this episode, but we'll come back to that. So, why then Paradox? Why then the games industry? How come you ended up here?
Yes, first, as I said, blue ocean strategy is very important for my life, and Paradox has found their blue ocean marketing, creative market niche with the brand strategy games. Then my big passion is also history and history of art. And I see in the video games industry, especially for games that we developed, it's a combination of technology and history and art. So I feel all of us, we are kind of Leonardo da Vinci, both technical inventors, but also combining art. And I really like that.
Right. And when did you join Paradox? How long have you been here now?
Almost a year. So it was October last year.
Okay, good. Okay, so let's talk about the role of CTO. It's perhaps one of the best and least understood roles at a company. On one hand, I mean, it's clear what you're in charge of, perhaps less what the kind of work entails on a more granular level, especially at a gaming company like Paradox that hasn't necessarily been a tech-heavy company. We haven't put tech in the first kind of point on the priority list. Can you talk us through what kind of you do, maybe mention a few of your KPIs and maybe describe what a week looks like and demystify the whole process?
It's a very good question because the CTO role is applied in different ways at different companies. So I can explain that I have two main areas of responsibilities, two heads, or I prefer to say, since it's the same head, I have a cap with the two pom-poms on that, covering my two areas of responsibility. So the first pom-pom is I'm responsible for two departments. One is DevOps and data, and the second one is IT department. DevOps are developing a lot of so-called player services. So we are building ecosystem around our games for player engagement and giving a lot of new things to our player. Also, we have a publishing platform. We have a big data engineering team taking care about our data storage, telemetry, and etc. At the same time, apart from leading those two departments, I'm also responsible for overall technology strategy at Paradox. As many of our listeners know, we have a lot of studios across the whole world. And I'm trying to work together with them and aligning their technology strategy with our big high-level vision, what we want to achieve.
Can you give me a couple of examples of the type of questions or challenges that you have? Are they related to game engines, for instance, or shared technologies, or what kind of challenges are you trying to bridge across the many studios?
Yes, currently I can say it can be divided in Horizon 1, 2, and 3. In Horizon 1, most questions come from those common shared services, and I think it's natural because Paradox grew very quickly. We have a lot of autonomous studios that is very good because they have that business agility and moving very quickly, but we have a lot of duplications in the system. The same solutions applied across different studios, or a need for common solutions that each studio would benefit from that, but no one has the time or dedicated resources to develop that. So the biggest challenge is to identify those things and see do that investigation, what is most beneficial, for example, it's not only game engines, localization. I can say localization is a big pain point in gaming industry, definitely. So some good solutions would be beneficial for all studios. Regarding the KPIs, there are a lot of KPIs. We have live services 24/7. Of course, it's a lot of SLAs. Everything should be up and running. But I can say there is one KPI that is almost the most important, although it's difficult to track. It's that balance between strategic and tactical solutions. You set some vision, what you want to achieve from technology perspective, strategy, how to go there. But along the way, all the time you're applying those tactical solutions. Just for this game, for this studio, for this market. From technology perspective, the problem is that you are creating those one-off solutions in your system architecture, which stays forever in your system. So you have to maintain that, and you diverge from your target architecture. And you create a technical debt that usually on a long term results in
delayed games.
Delayed games and consequences. And then monitoring and finding a good balance between strategic and tactical solutions. And of course, you have to go for tactical solutions. It's business, it's everyday life. You cannot say, oh, wait, my strategy does not say that, of course. But to find that good balance. And it's one very difficult KPI to follow, but it's extremely important.
Right. And how does a average week look like for you at Paradox?
Yes, of course, I have some meetings. I'm not saying a lot of meetings because I think it's very important to have time to think. Because usually when you think, then you come up with great ideas. And so you have to have that time. So my schedule is not fully booked only with meetings.
But I have to ask you then, do you book time to think?
Sometimes if I feel like that people are taking time from my calendar, I'm doing that. So apart from regular one-to-ones with my leaders, I'm not going to use the word managers. So I'm also focused on a lot of those cross-departments collaboration, how we can improve things, the whole flow through the organization, value stream called in Agile and Lean world, like end-to-end development. I feel sometimes that my job is like being a helicopter pilot, although I'm working on most of the time on then strategic high level. You have all the time go up to see the big picture, but then go down to understand the problem and help your teams to solve the problem. So all the time up and down. But also I have, since I'm a very curious person and I really like to learn about new domains, not only because I like that, but I know that when you learn about new domains, then you get new ideas how you can do that intersectional innovation, combine new domains in a new way. So if I continue with the metaphor of being a helicopter pilot, I have also time to make a trip to explore some new areas. So usually I book time with people from different department, although they say like, oh, but we don't have anything in common. I said, yes, but I have to learn more about what you're doing in order to maybe find some connection how we can work together and come up with some new groundbreaking ideas.
Right. Okay, cool. Thanks for sharing. Can we talk a little bit about, I mean, you've been with Paradox for a year. What do you see as some of the major challenges before Paradox in the years to come relating to your area and, you know, maybe narrowing down the field of view? Where do you see the main challenges being from your perspective?
One of the main challenges is the companies like Paradox, which were lucky or smart to create their market niche, how to stay there or to expand that. So it's also related to the market situation, to that S-curve, when you don't have a lot of competitors on the market. You know, then it's easier to grow if you are smart enough, but also how you keep your position. Also, when you're talking about innovation, or maybe it's not now innovation word is overused, so maybe it's better to say like product development, how you improve yourself. You're trying to find new areas. From technical perspective, it's very tricky because it's so easy that you see just that you're so focused on technical innovation, but without thinking that it really creates a business value.
Okay.
Because if you really innovate, it should be value innovation, that you innovate the value for the customer, not only like fancy technology solution.
Yeah.
But of course, technology answers that question: how you achieve your goals and related to the product and business strategy.
So your perspective is tech is a means to an end, is what you're saying in so many ways.
Yes.
Okay, and you didn't come from the games industry. I'm really interested to hear your perspective, and we talked about this over lunch and stuff in the past. But I would like to hear, once you started in the games industry, were there any kind of refreshing takes, any kind of interesting things, takeaways, and observations about the games industry?
Yes, I have a lot of very nice things that I saw here.
I want to hear the bad stuff.
No, first good things.
Okay.
Yes, of course. Such a passion for product. It should be like that.
Yeah.
And you know, at many companies, people don't have, all employees don't have such a passion for product. So it's really, I was so amazed when I saw how people are engaged and passionate. And it's not only passion for the product, it leads to that they take ownership and responsibility for the things that they do. So it's really great. Then community, that connection with the community. The way how Paradox established an sense and respond loop with our players, listening what they want, and building how to develop product. It's really according to all the recommendations, the last recommendation on the in the world how you should develop your product according to the product leadership. So I'm really amazed because I think it's pretty unique for games industry, that strong community connection with the customers that are players and passion for products.
Yeah. Can I ask then regarding community, do you feel that we have enough of a connection between the community and that feedback, close feedback with the DevOps teams? Or the people and your teams who are working more step behind the scenes and not actively talking necessarily to the players, or maybe are they, or like what are your thoughts there?
No, I don't think so that they're so disconnected. We have our channels, especially via wikis and forums, because it's our responsibility to maintain. So of course it should be improved, and it can be improved, and it can be better. We are working on that, but I don't feel that we are completely disconnected.
No.
Although we don't use the same channels as maybe game teams and the marketing to reach our players. And also we are responsible for all the PDX accounts, player accounts. So from that perspective, we know much more about our players than other people believe.
No, I mean, I think that's right. And I think for the past 7 years, we've been actively talking about the importance of these systems. We have them because there's great business value to them. There is great strategic value to them. And us being able to mirror many of the features that we see that Valve has in Steam or Xbox or Sony have in their systems, these systems are here to stay, and they have a measure of integration with our games and game features. The more we can bring those things closer together, and because the reality is that we have game teams and we have DevOps teams, and it probably needs to be that way, but bridging the gap between those and having the value propositions of the games being built more closely together, I think is a valuable thing and something we talk about all the time. And I think it's a learning that we've drawn over the years, is that the more close we can bring these things together, the better they can do. Let's talk about the opposite side. That what are your kind of, I can't believe these amateurs are still struggling with these things in the games industry? Because surely, because I mean the games industry is a younger industry, and there's a whole lot less formalized stuff. You mentioned about just internally in the same company at Paradox, we have many different studios that are solving the same problems over and over. I am so frustrated with the games industry, how secretive we are about so many of the systems that we are continuously solving. And it just feels like, how many times has a save system or a pathfinding system been created for a game that's people have created the exact same system in another game, even the same people might have created it. So what are your takes on like how amateurish the games industry is?
I would say that, as I said, it was great thing that sense respond loop, working close to other players, games industry. But kind of being isolated in that world, just gaming industry, many games companies missed some basic best practices for software development, for product leadership, but for many other things that are now like standards. I'm not going to say only agile and lean methodologies. There are a lot of other methodologies and philosophies,
Sure.
but today we are pretty inspired of agile ways of working. So I think the negative consequence of being isolated, only focus on our players, we missed some of those basic things, how you develop software. But on the other side, it's great because those things can be improved much easier than like establishing that connection and community with our players.
Yeah, okay.
And also when you mentioned duplicated solution, it's that challenge that there is no perfect recipe how you manage with that. You want to have your departments and studios autonomous to like move quickly, achieve business agility, but at the same time you want to find some common solution, some standardized central tech that everyone should benefit from that. And the answer on that, how you achieve that, is by clearly defining the vision, what you want to achieve. Okay. And then you can have autonomous studios moving towards that vision.
Okay. I also have to ask you, how do you sleep at night, knowing that nor you or any CTO will ever be as effective in bringing about the digital advancement in organization as the COVID virus has?
Yes. No, you left me without words. Although
that's the first, I'll tell you. Okay, let's move on. I have to do it.
But I think it was great. It was a black swan scenario, but yes, I have, in fact, an answer.
Okay, here we go.
Yes. Here we go. There is something that is called the anti-fragile concept. When you take a look at different type of organizations, how fragile or robust they are, you have different levels. You have fragile organizations, when they're exposed to shock, they break directly. Sure. Then you have a robust that can preserve for some things, resilient, which go back to the previous state. But anti-fragile organizations, they evolve during being exposed to shock. And I think it's exactly what happened during the COVID. We improved a lot of things. We weren't only resilient that we went back to the previous state. We are already improved.
Exactly. So I think, we're in a stronger state now.
Yes.
And it's not that we reverted back.
Yes. So although it was out of my control, the digitalization.
I think it doesn't apply so much for our business. I think we're very digital already. But people who are not ready for digital reality got a real rude awakening. The fun time to be a CTO. So let me move on then. And at this point, I'll have to probably disappoint some of our listeners, and you figured it out already, is that we won't talking about APIs, backends, SLAs, and other techie stuff, of course. But we're going to veer off into a territory that both I think Mina and I find way more interesting. You mentioned it already, but it's the intersection between leadership and business strategy. I think it's kind of safe to say that you've raised the bar when it comes to this at Paradox within the leadership segment. Not that it wasn't an active topic before, but your passion for self-development and talking about these topics and constant improvement through viewing our business through different lenses has taken off considerably since you joined. And I'm really happy that you did. You have us reading, rereading, and discussing many new books and topics on leadership, essentially. Can you talk a little bit about why this is a passion and inherently why you, as a technical person, the chief technology officer, you're the driving force behind this at Paradox?
First, thank you for your nice words. First, I have a big need to understand the big picture and how things fit together. Because if I use technology words, things are tightly coupled. They're not completely like independent, leadership and business and technology. Everything fits together and it's tightly coupled. First, it started when, since I said I was for a long time on a deep technology path. And in order to drive things, you need a kind of leadership you need people with you in order to drive initiatives. And then I got interested how I can do that in the best possible way. Also, I realized that many people, which I really admire, which are my role models from the leadership perspective, then you think, are they really just born leaders, or they worked on themselves in order to become better leaders? And then you discover a big area how you can really work on yourself, on your own core values, your life strategy and mission, and it contributes to being a better leader at work. So although my primary goal was to drive my technology initiatives, you have to learn how it fits together also to create a business value and how you lead those initiatives and people and team in order to execute and finish those things. And I also must say that attending a lot of conferences, especially agile conferences. I started with just technical talks. I was interested only in technical things. But then you hear a lot of interesting things from smart people talking about leadership, business, organizational structure, processes. And it's like, oh, but it's related to that. I cannot do that without doing that. And then you see those intersections between domains and why it's important that you take care about both things. So I learned a lot thanks to all those conferences where I learned a lot of new things.
Okay, so I know we have listeners from many walks of life and professionals listening. Maybe in order to make this slightly less abstract, can you relate to us maybe how one of these concepts that have been popularized through management books, lecture series, TED Talks, the things that you mentioned, that are applicable to our business, either paradox or otherwise? Can we talk about whatever favorite that you have keeps popping up? You talk often about perfect being the enemy of good, the roundabout kind of analogy. What got you here won't get you there. These are concepts that are very popularized, and I think they're easy to scoff at if you look at them from the outside. But they do have a lot of great insights into the common problems that are found in growing organizations. Would you like to pick one and kind of make it more relatable, understandable for the listeners who are not that familiar with these kind of management type of books and concepts?
Exactly. I would go back to that autonomy and alignment. Because when you take a look at the organizations and how they've evolved during the time and history, you have three important things. One is organizational structure, one is leadership, and it's processes, how you execute that leadership. And of course, it's tightly coupled. What is that challenge between autonomy and alignment? If you have just autonomy, a lot of great initiatives, and you don't have a clearly defined vision and goal of where the company wants to go, then you have people like ad hoc people driving their own paths, and nothing is delivered in the end. On the contrary, you have those hierarchical organizations that are high on alignment, discipline. But what is the problem? They're moving slowly because all the times all things should be going up and down, approved of the higher managers and so on. And what we want to achieve is that the perfect balance between autonomy and alignment. And how you can achieve that? By clearly define a vision, what you want to achieve and why you want to achieve, and then autonomous teams can find a way to do that. Theoretically, it sounds very nice, but in practice, what are the challenges? First, how you lead people. When you mentioned that roundabout concept, I really like that because it's the way how you work. Do you apply on the contrary of roundabout, it's traffic lights that you have a lot of those controlling mechanisms and stops how you lead people. On the contrary, roundabout is much more you let people taking over the responsibilities and decisions, but also having the discipline to execute on them. Because in the roundabout, everyone takes their own responsibility not to crash to another car. And it's a big challenge. First, all people don't want to be autonomous. And although they want to drive initiatives, they don't take ownership and responsibility on execute and follow through. And then it comes to leadership in place. How you lead people and teach them and empower them, but also so that they really take the ownership and responsibility and become more autonomous. I would say also there is another parallel about organizational structure compared to the natural world. You have an organization that work like wolf pack. You have one person who decides everything. Then you have a much more like army hierarchical organization. You have an organization working as a machine, command and control. Then lately, during the past 10 years, the importance of building a nice company culture, empower people, came to place that we should be like a big family.
Sure.
And the goal is to achieve something that is called teal organization.
Teal.
Yes, which works as a living organism. That you have organs, each of them is autonomous, taking over responsibility, but you have that nice coordination through the organism. And of course, it's a vision, probably no one will reach that vision, but we can strive to that.
Yeah. Okay. So if the roundabout analogy or the how to solve the problems of intersections, you can either use stop signs, stop signals, or roundabouts as a self-governing simple rules that can solve complex problems. Are there equivalents to the paradox organization that we can talk about that are being refined or improved that maybe had challenges there? What's the equivalent to paradox when we've had maybe stop signs or stop signals, and now we're trying to do it more roundabout way? Because that you're saying that that's the important thing, that we have autonomy and alignment at the same time, which is something we've talked about on the podcast before.
I can say it's a different at the different departments. So we have all types of different type of leadership and those controlling signs or roundabouts. What is also, now I'm just talking from my perspective, technology perspective, there is one big challenge, and it's expressed by convoy law, which says that organizational structure is always mapped on the system architecture and vice versa.
I did not follow that.
I will explain more into details. If you want to have if you have a silo organization, it will result in monolithic architecture that is not nice and granular and component based.
Sure.
If you want to refactor your architecture and build it towards microservices, then you need to have such organizational cross-functional team which are responsible for the whole vertical slice, like all parts of that microservice, so that they can develop that, deploy, integrate in the product, and so on. So it also, because organizational structure also is related to leadership, but also has effects on technology. So you have to, or system architecture. So you have to think about all these three domains. Maybe now I'm getting
my eyes
too
slightly
techy.
glazed over when we're going through that. But
but
what I take away from that is that you have to have an adaptability to the different types of things you want to achieve. One solution won't fit all, and you have to be adaptable.
Exactly.
I think that a close equivalent to this that we've mentioned on the podcast before, but I'd like to mention it again, is that we've talked about these concepts, but maybe more in military terms. We've talked about mission type tactics, I believe it's called, where, we talked about it before. A unit is given a goal, a deadline, and resources, and then they have the freedom to operate and achieve those goals. This kind of doctrine frees up higher leadership from tactical details. But the success of this depends on that the intent of the mission is understood by the people doing it. Otherwise, you end up in these kind of situations where you wish for something and it comes true, but in the worst possible way, in the kind of monkey paw wishing way. So what we would like to talk about is how this relates back to our organization. Do you think that how do you perceive that Paradox level of maturity was in understanding these kind of the concept of autonomy and alignment when you joined, compared to other industries, perhaps?
Yes, I can say in the video games industry generally, then autonomy and creativity is very important, and I completely agree with that. I think what is sometimes a little bit missing, it's that discipline, to execute an idea and to take ownership. So it's not just that you're coming with the new ideas every day and then leave them unfinished.
Sure.
So it's a challenge working when you want to find that good balance with new initiatives, creativities, but you need to have some discipline on execution. So it's a nice also parallel with that military things. I read a recently very nice book. It's called Turn the Ship Around.
Mm-hmm.
It's written by a captain of a military submarine,
Okay.
where they really applied, in military, that command control leadership. And he realized he couldn't manage that
No.
because he needed the competence of people who worked with him. But they were afraid of telling their things.
Yeah.
So, and he managed to turn that leadership around and empowered people and build that environment which creates result.
Yeah.
And it's a tricky thing. And I think here we have a more challenge with a lot of creativity, but align that towards the same vision. And only defining the vision is not enough. You have to break it down, what it means for different departments, exactly what you said before. It's not only enough high-level vision, and no one understands what it means for them.
So coming back to what you spoke about, maybe a little bit of lack of discipline. Don't you think maybe this is the other side of the coin? Because if the advantage in the games industry is that people really inherently care about the products, that passion, that emotion, the other side of it is that with emotion comes maybe lack of discipline.
Exactly, and you cannot have it all, but that's why you can strive for a better balance between creativity and discipline.
Okay, cool. Time is running away from us. Let's delve into another topic that I wanted to really go into, because this is something you and I spoke about the other week. It's something I struggle with and have with over the years in the games industry, and the less I know about it, the less I'm sure about it. The more I know about it, the less sure I am of it. And that's the balance between qualitative and quantitative factors in decision making. I think your outside perspective here is again useful, especially in the backdrop of what's happening now with COVID and the Swedish Public Health Agency's handling of it. Generally speaking, engineers, scientists, and tech folks want precise, verifiable, accurate data and systems to underpin decisions in their making. And this is something that we've seen is why Sweden's handling is somewhat very different from other countries, where the scientists are doing most of the calls, and if they're saying is that, hey, if there's not data, we're not going to do it, and they point to very specific data to support their decisions. How do you reconcile this way of operating when there's either lack of data or lack of precision in the data, or when you have an environment that's changing incredibly rapidly?
Very, very interesting and relevant question. I know that question about data-driven organizations, quantitative data, qualitative insights, how you can make decisions upon them, very interesting. I agree that many people would prefer accurate data, but what I prefer, it's systematic approaches, how you can analyze all those input parameters, because reality is like that. You don't always can get accurate data or all input parameters, and you must do the business decision. You cannot wait like 3 months or 3 years in order to get that. My take on the whole thing about data-driven organization, data-informed, data-driven decision-making. I think you log down just in one area if you say data-driven. For me, innovation or improvement, how you set your strategies, consists that you collect a lot of inputs from different areas. Quantitative data, qualitative insights, market picture, competitors analysis, your own capabilities as a company, industry expertise, creativity. So it's all input parameters, data is just one of them. Then you bake them together, and then you set your strategy and take a decision. And of course, it's not mathematics. No. There is no guarantee that your equation
is... It's not an exact science, no.
Yes, exactly. But I believe if you have those systematic approaches, how you collect all these input parameters, and you are aware that you should value both your industry expertise, creativity, but also take a look at the data, they will help you to make a better business decision.
I think this is particularly tricky for the games industry, whereas I think Paradox has come from an area where we did not have data, we did not have insights teams, we did not have data analytics teams. A large part of the decision making was made with gut feeling that was pretty well honed. and then balance against some data. But like we said before, what got you here won't get you there, right? And at some point, we need to start refining these. But I find it so hard because the games industry in itself just changes so rapidly. Microsoft goes out and buys Bethesda. Not a lot of people saw that necessarily coming, and then suddenly that redraws the landscape. A 2-year-old game, Among Us, gets streamed by a big influencer, and suddenly it's the biggest game in the world. And not to mention the Minecraft, Fortnites, or TikToks, or whatever that just appears, and within 6 months it fundamentally redraws the map of how things are working. So I don't know if there's, what we're saying is that as we have to find a balance between these, but you're saying that the systematic approach is the only way to it rather than...
Yes, and to balance between those different approaches, not only be locked on data-driven or insights-driven or just analyzing the market, like all the time monitoring all these things. And many people, or those business people, are saying there are 3 things for successful companies, why they succeeded. It's, of course, competence, unfair advantage, and luck. But I think you can gain that unfair advantage if you have those, if you are preparing yourself for different things and think, oh, and from my technical perspective, one great area is how we can convert our technical capabilities into competitive advantage. And it's something that you systematically can work on that. So it's not just a question of luck or market situation change. So you can have an influence.
Yeah, and I think that we've also said in the past that you can set yourself up to have more luck as well. It's outside your control, but you can affect certain factors that influence you more. And it comes back to this. There's a reason why there are literally thousands and thousands of indie games that exist out there, but there's good reason why Among Us took off and others did not. It's a multiplayer game. It is fun to watch. It has a number of different underlying factors that inherently create the product, the game, that makes it suitable to become lucky. And it's the same thing with Paradox business model. And I use this example 100 times, but I think it really applies. We can't control what Gabe Newell or Steam or Valve does. We have almost no control over what they do. We've tried, but we have no control over them. When they institute the new policy, it's just rolled with the punches. We're not the biggest publisher, and they wouldn't even listen to us. So when they rolled out their refund policy, anyone can refund the game if you played it for 2 hours or less. We just had to adapt to that. But a Paradox game, 2 hours, you don't even get past the main menu. While other games you can start and finish under 2 hours. So we were lucky, but we built our business in a way where we were resilient and we're setting ourselves up for more luck, essentially. Okay, because, the impatient devil's advocate in me just wants to say there's no such thing as accurate data to support decisions when things end up being decided by so many other factors, and just go for it. But that's kind of a cop-out, we're saying, is that we have to find a more a systematic approach to it. Daniel, you're really missing out on some heavy shit, and I kind of miss our fart jokes and the usual level we're at. So come back so we can do more of the fart jokes. Before we wrap up, can you give the listeners, and we know that we have people in the organization that are listening and people outside, 1 or 2 essential reading recommendations that you would say, either maybe one for the Paradox employees that are listening, and for those that are interested in the business of video games industry in general, like stuff to read?
Yes, since we touched upon and talked about the self-leadership, I would recommend to Paradox employees a very nice book published by Hardware Business Review. It's called On Managing Yourself, how you can work on yourself in order to become a better leader. And for all listeners, I have to mention Blue Ocean Strategy and Blue Ocean Shift. There are 2 books related to the same subject. Why I think it's so interesting and valuable for video games industry. The industry, we have a lot of companies developing games. The market is getting crowded, red ocean of competition. How you can be successful in such a red ocean of competition, how you can find your new market niche or create a new blue ocean in it.
Thank you. I can chime in and say that the Managing Yourself book is really digestible and easy to kind of take in, even if you're new to the subject. And finally, I have to ask you, why haven't you written a book already? You know, swimming with business sharks in the fast lane, or I don't know, backstroke your way to a high ROI or something. Why no book?
Great suggestions for the titles. In fact, I contributed to some books, but it's very interesting that you're asking me, because I told Daniel my life goals and vision, but I didn't share that with you. In fact, I plan to write a book, but I'm waiting that I turn 55. Why? Because my role model is José Saramago. He is Portuguese author.
Yeah.
He received the Nobel Prize in Literature for 15 years ago. He also worked with technology, published his first book at the age of 55, and managed to get a Nobel Prize. Of course, Nobel Prize is out of the scope of my vision, but I'm waiting. There are still several years to go, and but we will see if it's going to be a professional business book or just a novel.
And this is where you need to apply the Red Ocean strategy to the Nobel Peace Prize. Which of the prizes is easiest to get? And then go pursue that instead of just writing a book, I think.
Exactly. In fact, I have an answer. I already analyzed that.
Okay, of course you did. I don't know if the rest of you listeners have Nobel Prizes on your bucket list, but the Blue Ocean strategy is a good way to kind of tackle
Just a comment. Economy, when you applied psychology on economy, it results in a Nobel Prize.
Okay.
Several people manage with that.
Okay, that's the blue ocean of Nobel Peace Prizes, not math or physics at least.
Yes.
And medicine is really hard as well. Okay, I think we're done with today's show. As always, thank you for joining us, Mina. We'll have you back and discuss something more hands-on or even more abstract next time, I think. As always, please get in touch with us and let us know what you think. Tell us what you'd like us to cover in the future. As always, ping us on Twitter, send us a raven. And until next time, stay safe, stay sane, and play some video games. Bye-bye.